Welcome back. Our guest today is Milton Brown, currently a member of the Washington County, Florida School District. Here talking about all kinds of things, most recently school safety, the SRO officers in the school. Now we're going to talk a little bit about bullying. I really liked the way that you talked about the cyberbullying component, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more. But a day doesn't go by when one of these rough and tumble parents who grew up the hard way, and they say, you know, when I was bullied, I just punch a guy in the mouth. What they never take into account, and many times it's because they live in an area maybe that doesn't have high-speed internet access, so they don't have to deal with it. But cyberbullying is a huge, real thing right now. Talk a little bit about that and how it pertains to Green Dot.
Cyberbullying really, and I talk about it from a standpoint of it literally is something that changes by leaps and bounds every day. The technology, 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have thought of every high school student, just about everyone having a cell phone. And one of the things we talk about from Green Dot is how now, if an incident occurs, a fight, you see, the first thing you see is kids taking out their cell phone to videotape it. So that
World
kid,
star?
That's it. That kid who got bullied, now there are literally thousands and thousands of people, if they're lucky, only thousands that are seeing that. And it literally, and especially as a teenager, it changes your life. And to think that, oh, they just need to deal with it. No, it's a different world from where we saw. One of the things, and talking about school safety along with that, one of the things that's always brought up to me as far as when you're dealing with school safety, they say, well, when we were kids, we had our shotguns or our rifles in our truck and went hunting before and hunting after we brought it on campus. Well, the world changes. And again, the world changes so that that's not feasible, it's not allowable. Things have changed to where we had to react. The Florida legislature, since I've been a board member now for a little over 6 years, every legislative session, one of the top priorities and top topics has been cyberbullying and the laws that they've had to change to keep up with the technology and keep up with the changes that are going on. So it's a problem that I don't look at anyone and say, well, they're the problem or they're creating the problem, because a lot of times the problem might not have even existed a year ago, and so they're reacting to how do we fix this problem. So you can't say, well, they're the bad guys, because again, the problem changes day by day, and if you have it today, it's a different problem tomorrow. And so we basically are really, a lot of times, unfortunately, we try to play catch up.
Green Dot was a program that was developed. Washington and Holmes County had the opportunity early on to sort of buy into the program and to be a part of it. You've been on the show already, and we talked about Green Dot, but for our viewers who haven't experienced that yet, talk a little bit about what is Green Dot, what is the purpose of it, and the scope of the program, and how are we effectively using it today?
Okay. Well, giving you the basic premise on Green Dot. Green Dot is a violence prevention program which deals with bullying, any kind of violence, including cyberbullying or texting, even sexting, all those things that unfortunately our young people have to deal with in schools today. I think we were here a little over a year ago, but what we had just gotten kicked off. The first year of the Green Dot program is really one in which you deal with getting what we call initial early adopters. Students, we find out students who are leaders in the schools. And some people, when they hear that, say, oh, they're only talking jocks. Well, that's an aspect of it. We want the leaders who are on the athletic teams, but we also want the leaders who are in the band. We want the leaders who are in drama. I know dealing with Holmes County, we let the teachers, not only Holmes County, but both counties, but we let the teachers help us in addressing and identifying those student leaders who are in each group. I know when you're dealing with in Holmes County, they're big into cowboys. And some of the teachers say, well, we have a group that we call the Cowboys. So we wanted the leaders who were in the cowboy group. We wanted leaders who were in the cheerleaders. We wanted whatever group or whatever, not just athletics, not just groups, but social groups too, drama and stuff like that. But we wanted those leaders, and we picked out those leaders. We invited them to come in, and we did some subgroups with them. We talked to them about, hey, what's going on in schools? What would make this school better, and how could you see the Green Dot program working at this school? So that first year is really trying to get those people in, and they identify other students who are leaders on campus, and we invite them to the early trainings. Those trainings are called bystander trainings. I love the schools, and I love what Washington and Holmes County superintendents have done. They allow us to have a full day of training with those students. And I can't emphasize enough on how the superintendents and the principals of those schools, how it's a commitment from them. As you know, right now in the school system, testing is a priority, and finding out from the teachers, and they literally relate teachers' pay and teachers' bonuses to how well they do on tests. So for those teachers and principals to buy in and say, this is important enough for us to give certain days during the year for you to do classes, even before some of the recent incidents they brought in, was huge to us. So they would give us a full day to go in and do what we call bystander trainings. And we mentioned earlier about how the resource officers might only be seen if a person is an offender or a victim. Well, that's what we look at with Green Dot. Green Dot realizes that most people in the school, most students don't have to deal with bullying. Most students don't have to deal with texting or anything inappropriate. However, even one is too many. So what we do with Green Dot, we try to get what we call the bystander, the student who is not involved in the bullying, the student who is not the victim. So we don't look for the student who's the perpetrator. We also don't look for the student who's the victim. We look for that person who's the bystander, the one who's not involved, and we teach them, how can I help? How can I get involved? And we teach them and give them situations and ways that they can, things that they can do to prevent problems from occurring. Something as simple as checking on someone and asking that student, are you okay? Or telling that teacher, hey, you need to check on so-and-so. They just don't seem to be themselves today. We also do training, and we did an in-service training for the teachers too this year. We've done that, and it helps to get them to see what's going on. One of my what I would consider Green Dot's greatest successes occurred, and I really didn't even know it had occurred until someone approached me and said, hey, they talked about Green Dot at the Holmes County school board meeting, last meeting. I said, really? I said, what happened? They said, well, the principal at Holmes County High School talked about the difference that Green Dot was making in his school and how he could see the changes in some of the students, and it really made me feel good, because a lot of times you don't get the feedback from the students and from the program. Also, one of the things that occurred, and again at Holmes County, we had the students who were in our class to go out, and we had permission from the principal for them to write inspirational quotes on the sidewalk in the area, in the courtyard where the students come out and eat lunch at. Quotes like one by Dr. Martin Luther King that says, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Other quotes that just inspirational quotes, and let them know that someone was thinking about them. And we did that on a Wednesday, and I think Friday morning a school board member just happened to come out and visit the school and walked around and saw that on the ground, and she said that it reassured her faith in young people. And she posted that on Facebook, and I saw that. And it let me know that there is good that's occurring in the system and what we're doing. And one of the things we talked about on an initial interview was that initially after doing it, people might think, oh, there's a lot more violence in our homes in Washington County schools. But because of the spotlight that we put on these situations, and the students who now feel emboldened to, it's okay for me to approach that resource officer, to tell that resource officer about an incident that occurred, or to tell that teacher, the reporting of incidents might go up initially, but over time, because it's getting reporting, they'll go down. And one of the great things that I'm here to announce that I didn't have in place when we did the last interview, but that we said that we had initially wanted to happen, was that we wanted to take the program into Chipley High School. I'm here today and glad to say that we have started. We got 3 teachers from Chipley High School. We took them to Orlando. We got them trained. We're now starting that initial phase, the early adopters at Chipley High School, finding out who those students are, doing subgroups, and hopefully next year's school system or school term will actually start the training of students at Chipley High School in the Green Dot program. So we're super excited about that and excited to see the differences that it's going to make here at Chipley High School. Also, the same kind of differences that we've seen at Vernon High School and we've also already seen at Holmes County High School.
Much like we refer to the vocal minority in any group, all you ever hear about are the problems. Nobody goes around saying, hey, today nothing bad happened in Chipley. All they say is, well, last week this happened, or next week this is supposed to happen. As you got here today, as you arrived here in the classroom, you saw that we had a group of sixth grade STEM students from Vernon Middle School. This week, Monday through Thursday, we're hosting 240 middle school students from Chipley, from Rolac Middle School, and from Vernon Middle School. I was one of those people, and I don't miss a chance to say it, that I judged all young adults by those very few that you ran into in the convenience store that couldn't look you in the eye, that couldn't make change, that you really didn't want a whole lot to do with because they weren't forthcoming, and they were just not the right kind of people that you wanted to be around. When you're involved with school kids to any great extent, you realize they, again, are that vocal minority, but the ones who are the ones that, behind the scenes, doing all the right stuff every day, are those salt-of-the-earth kids, and we have much to be proud of. I say all that because I would imagine that, as you pointed out, when you put a spotlight on a problem, all of a sudden you think you have more of that problem. It's just that there's never been a spotlight on it before. You said one success story talking about Holmes County. I would imagine, I would be willing to bet that every single day there are incidents that nobody finds out about because that one kid decided he would go up to the bully and say, this isn't right, or he went to the victim and he said, you need to talk to somebody. He went to a teacher, did something to diffuse a situation. You're doing this now just over a year. Is there any way to measure this success? Are there metrics in place, or just do you have to go by innuendo and for instance, the Holmes County superintendent saying it appears that things are better? Or do we even need one? Do we even need a measurement?
Well, one of the things, and that I like about the program that we do, they require a measurable portion, and it is a measurable portion that we have to report on after each class. Initially, when we have a green dot bystander training, the first thing we do when we go in that class, before we talk to them about anything else, we give them a survey. That survey is anonymous. We tell them we want you to be totally honest, don't write your names on it, but we want to know. Some of the questions on that survey deal with bullying. It might say, are you familiar with any incidents of bullying that has occurred on campus? And then we'll ask them questions on that same survey about, well, what did you do about it? Or have you ever reported a bullying incident? Would you feel comfortable reporting a bullying incident? Would you feel comfortable in talking with a teacher about a bullying incident? Well, we give them that survey, and then we pretty much the exact same questions at the end of the day, ask them the same questions, but we also at that time, hopefully we'll see some changes of, has this class today encouraged you to report incidents of bullying? If you now saw a incident of bullying, do you feel more comfortable reporting it than you did, say, yesterday or before this class occurred? And so we have put in measurable questions that we can see the responses and see, okay, we had 20 students in this class. 15 of them said before the class that they didn't feel comfortable intervening in a situation if they knew their safety was okay. And yet after the class, we now have it where 20 of them feel comfortable, or there's more than before. So there's certain questions that are in there that are required that we have to actually report on to our funding source, which is Tallahassee, that we are making a difference, that there's measurable increases in it. I do want to mention another incident, and we were talking about measurable things that occur. Crestview High School, one of the things that bother me is the incidents where there's a fight or there's a situation, and now students, it seems to always go to the cell phones of taking pictures. Well, what we try to do is we try, and culture change is one of the words we use in our thing. We want to change the culture in the schools to where it's okay, or where it's the norm for students to want to react in the right way. Giving an example of how that works is Crestview High School had a student, and it was a video that they showed that there was a fight occurred. And on the first video, you can see other students reaching for their cell phones to start recording. Well, on that video, it showed a student in a hoodie, obviously walking up toward the fight that was occurring. And if you just looked at that video, you would think, okay, something bad's about to happen. Well, you see that student kind of walking up with the hoodie on. He walks up to that fight, and he pulls them apart, steps between them, and stops the fight. Well, that then went viral. And with that going viral, from what I understand at Crestfield High School, now it's cool to stop the fight. It's cool to be the one stopping things and not grabbing that phone. And that's what we're trying to have happen in these schools that we're doing. And I'm seeing some good signs of talking to students, and they realize, don't grab a phone, try to stop this, report it before it occurs, do something. But the incident there in Crestfield is an example of what we're trying to do in our schools and get that to occur here, even before the fights or the incidents of pulling out the cell phones occur, to do the right thing. We give them training on how to be safe. Safety is always the number one thing that we want them to do or to have. And so we give them tools on how to be safe. And we always, always, always reinforce the fact that no one has to do everything, but everyone has to do something. And I'll say that again. That is our primary things that we teach to the students. We're not asking anyone to do everything, but we're asking everyone to do something.
Our culture in the United States historically, and you can go back to the old gangster movies or the prison movies, or, we almost worship the bad guys sometimes, in the case of,
Yes.
of our culture. Our culture has been that you don't want to be the rat. You don't want to be the tattletale. You don't want to be the guy who gets shot because he ratted out his other criminal friends. But as you point out, if you can make the alternate cool,
Yes.
and at the end of the day, all these kids really think about, all they really want is to have a little bit of spotlight on them. So whether they're spotlighted for breaking up the fight or being the one that threw the big punch, it's probably immaterial to them. So if you can make it cool, it's a lot easier to be the hero by breaking up a fight than it is to take a punch. I boxed as a young kid. Nobody wins a fight. You might be the victor. You might be the one still standing, but you hurt, and you're going to hurt for a while. So I like that very much. So have you incorporated that aspect into your training where you actually point out what should be obvious, and that's that, hey, be the guy that is the hero and get your accolades or your viral aspect from that part of it?
We have, and that's an important part of it, because one of the things that when we deal with it, we actually work from a foundation of we seek culture change. And culture change, when people hear that, they always think, oh Lord, that's not going to happen. But we realize, and we point out to them, because it had to happen to me. I had to be told and explained. They had to explain that culture change occurs all the time. The one item that I always like to use is smoking, because we work in conjunction with SWAT, tobacco program. But smoking, when I was in high school, you had students and teachers who would take a break and go outside and smoke together. That is unheard of. I have students literally falling out of their seats laughing about that when they hear it. But they realize, well, that just is not right. It doesn't occur. Well, I explained to them that I have now three grandchildren, and I want the day to come to when they get in school, they will laugh when I say, hey, what happened at school? Was there any violence or anything? And they say, violence? That doesn't occur. We don't do that. And so I seek that day to when culture occurs and culture change occurs, to where they see it is cool to be the one not committing violence. It's cool to be the one stopping the violence. And I look for the day to when they're excited, and we try to tell them that you should be excited and know that you have been the one to prevent violence. It's a good feeling when you see a student who has maybe been bullied and picked on, and you're able to go over there and pick them up and talk to them and maybe say, hey, come sit with me at lunch today, and be the hero. And we already have students like that in our schools. We already have many individual heroes, and we talked about it before. The spotlight is not on them. And I think of an incident that one of the Florida State football players that recently, it went viral because he invited a kid to come sit with him. Well, we tell them that happens in our schools really every day. We want it to happen more. We want to be able to have a reward. One of the things that I'm pushing right now is in each school to have a student of the week, to where not only they're good in their grades, or they're a good basketball or football player, but they're a good citizen. They did something good, and we can reward them in some way of being a good student of the week who maybe talked about violence or prevented violence from occurring, and they're becoming the hero because of what they did, and what they did to prevent something from occurring.
In the 50s, when I was a kid, culture was something that took hundreds of years to change. And as you point out, life moves much more quickly these days. It was just a little over a year ago that you came and talked about the inception of Green Dot. Sounds like you've made huge strides. I'd like you to consider coming on maybe a little more frequently than a year from now. Because I think just like culture changes are occurring more rapidly, I think your response to the Green Dot program, thanks so much for taking the time. Thanks for all that you do. Hats off to the health department for being forward-thinking enough to embrace this program.
Thank you.
Are you getting requests from other school districts to kind of have a blueprint or to find out how it works for you so they can make the decision of whether they want to go forward?
One of the things that we have going on right now, we always have monthly conference calls that not only one's monthly conference call within the state, but also monthly conference calls within the nation. And one of the things that we were just addressing the end of last week and yesterday was that they're wanting input from us. Other school districts are saying, how are y'all doing this? We've seen the success. We've seen the changes. Well, they're literally wanting our game plan. One of the things, an example since I've seen you last, we did a Green Dot football game. Holmes County High School and Bluntstown High School had a football game in which they played. And just like a pink out night where it's for Cancer Society, we did that with Green Dot to where we get the word out. We have tables set up, different green stuff around, and we get that message that, hey, violence is unacceptable at these schools. And so we continue to get that message out. Other schools see this and they say, how can we get it? And we give them that information. One of the other districts that has contacted us, and one of the forward-thinking superintendents, is Walton County. Walton County has contacted us. Okaloosa County, the Air Force in Okaloosa County has a what they call a community side to it. Well, one of their commanders saw the community side, but he said, a year ago, my daughter is going off to college. I want her to have more information on this Green Dot program. So they contacted us. We gave them more information on the high school program and how they could do that. And I'm hoping that they implemented that and gave that information to them. But for a person to see this and take it to heart and say, you know, that's successful, so successful. I have a daughter who's going off to college. I want her to be able to see this. He knew that it would give her tools as far as safety in her own personal life, but just personally being safe is not enough. You need an entire buy-in from the whole campus, at college campus. You mentioned about me coming back more frequently. I would love to do that because this can only be successful not only if we implement it in the high school, but if we get buy-in from the community as a whole. So by coming on to your show and talking about it, so when the students go home and say, well, Mom, we learned Green Dot today, or Dad, we learned about Green Dot, they'll have some idea of what the Green Dot program is and not be against it or suspicious of it, but they'll already know what it is and what it's about, and they'll be encouraging of that student to come to one of our trainings.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Our guest today has been Milton Brown, currently a school board member in Washington County, Florida, talking about lots of things, talking about the new school resource officers that we're currently enjoying in every school in Washington County, as well as the Green Dot program. If they want to find out more about Green Dot, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can contact me, myself, or they can contact the Washington County Health Department. They can contact me, Milton Brown. You can call me actually on my cell phone number. I don't mind giving it out because that's something, when I ran for school board, that's something I've always done. Contact me if I might not know the solution, but I could sure get you toward the person who can help you. But that cell phone number for any of the problems in the schools or for the Green Dot program is 850-260-5767. Again, that's 850-260-5767. Or you can contact the Washington County Health Department. Just ask for myself, Milton Brown, or the Green Dot program.
Very good. That's that number on your screen right now. The Green Dot program, brand new just a year ago. Already it's become viral in and of itself. Check it out. I think there's something there for everyone, and certainly something that everyone can learn by that program. We'll be right back.